We live in a world where everything is so instant and it happens so easily. We're on our cell phones, we're on email, we can WhatsApp, we can TikTok, we can tweet, we can do Facebook Messenger. There is just so many ways for us to actually communicate with each other. But I think what happens a lot of the time is that we make an assumption that we have communicated clearly. And there's that old saying, if you assume something, you make an ass out of you and me. So I think one of the most important things that we need to do is really, really look at how we communicate. So, for example, very simple one. If you've made an arrangement to meet somebody for a cup of coffee, that's absolutely fantastic. And, you say, right, we'll meet at 12 at the usual. And, so often we assume that what the usual is. May not be. The other person may think, okay, I'm going to go to Forno's Bakery in Craighall Park, whereas you're sitting at Forno's Bakery in Dunkeld. So it's really important that you lay out how you are going to communicate. And that's just one very, very simple part of it. The other part, of course, is when you have something really important to communicate. If you are arranging something, you have to make sure that you are following through, you are following up. If you've sent an important email to somebody, don't literally again assume that that message has got through to that person. Sure, I'm not saying phone them immediately, send them a WhatsApp to say, did you get my email? But if you haven't had a response, then in a day or so, just make sure that you actually do follow up and say, I'm just following up on my email. Did you receive it? And is X, Y, and Z in order? On the converse of that, of course, it's very important that you, as the receiver of that email, follow up as well. You say, thank you, I've received your email, etc., etc. It's just, not only is it just good manners, but it also will stop you or stop potential bad situations happening. Because it's so easy to misinterpret and misrepresent things. The other thing that we need to talk about is, if you rely, as I do, and I'm a huge proponent of this, rely on WhatsApp communication. One of the things that is lacking, despite the plethora of emojis and things, is actually the tone that comes across behind written communication. If we deal with each other on a face-to-face level, it's so much easier to interpret what the mood and what the intent of the other person is. Whereas if we send out a WhatsApp, I know I have a particularly sarcastic sense of humor, I think is the way of putting it. I can be very, very sarcastic. And people who know me understand that and, find it quite quirky, and it's part of who I am. But if you don't know me and I will say something off the cuff, like a little bit droll, it can come across as really, really offensive. And I think it's important that when writing, especially WhatsApping, sending emails, etc., to be very aware of the tone of the way you communicate. Another big place for this, and boy, am I always in trouble here, is on Facebook. I may make a comment on somebody's status, and again, it's my sense of humor, it's the way I talk, etc. And it can so easily be misinterpreted. The other thing is when you are commenting publicly, like on a sort of Facebook, Instagram, etc., is, not to just again assume that everybody is on the same page and the same wavelength as you. Because it is so easy to just offend, and we have to be really, really careful about that. I have very particular political views. I have very particular views, especially around international politics. I try not to get too involved in local politics and make too many statements locally, but certainly internationally. And I think especially going into the American elections now in a month's time, just over a month's time, the option to comment on what's going on is so easy, and we can write off one or other of the candidates so easily, and it does cause offense. There are people that are virulently pro one candidate and or another, and is it really necessary to get that deeply involved in a controversy like that? So I think what I'm trying to say to you is, just when we communicate, be clear, be concise, be very careful, especially in your written communication, that nowadays, because we're not seeing each other often, and it's sort of digital, a lot of our communication, we lose the ability to identify the emotions behind it. And what can be said in a very sort of harsh text, or what will come across and be perceived as harsh, actually may not be that. So I think when we communicate, be very clear how we communicate, make arrangements properly, be careful when we write to each other, how we address each other, how we address issues, and just clarify your communication. Have a wonderful week. I will see you next week, Wednesday. Have a fab day.